Hi everybody. For the lesson that I was focusing on, it's for 10th grade English, and the content area standard that I was addressing was analyzing historically significant speeches such as Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, and looking at those to find the rhetorical devices used and the features that make them memorable and effective speeches. And so the two speeches that I just mentioned are the ones that I will be using for this lesson. And I'm going to have my students read through them, and we'll talk about all the different rhetorical devices. But the specific strategy that I'll be focusing on for this activity is the pre-reading strategy. There's a lot of vocabulary that students may or may not be familiar with, and I definitely want to make sure that they are familiar with it before we get into the reading of the speeches. So vocabulary like parallel construction, anaphora, simile, metaphor, allusion, rhetorical devices as a concept themselves. So the strategy that I was going to use for pre-reading is going to be the personal glossary strategy, in which students write down each one of the terms that they're going to be needing for the activity in a list, sort of like antithesis, parallel construction, metaphor, simile, epistrophe, so on and so forth. And then they'll use classroom resources like dictionaries or their glossaries in their textbooks, or even any computers or technology that we have in the classroom at the time. And they're going to be writing down definitions of each one of those terms. For example, the word simile, if a student had that, you might write an analogy made between two things that includes the word like or as. And that'll be in the sort of the second of the three columns in their personal glossary. And in their third column of their glossary, they'll be writing a sentence that demonstrates what the term is. So going back to the example of simile, a student might write the sentence, "My teacher was as tall as a giant in a circus." So he's got the simile there, and it's an example of what a simile is. That way the student can look back in their personal glossary while we read through the speeches and say, oh, this is a simile, this is a metaphor, and they'll have a better understanding of what all of those vocabulary words are. And I really like the personal glossary because students can use that not just for this activity, but throughout their time in English class, throughout any of their high school classes for that matter. And they can add to it, always refer back, change it. And the examples that they come up with and put in themselves are things that they make up that are meaningful to them. It doesn't have to be related to any activity in particular, but it's helpful for them in any way that helps them remember. That's what they can use. So that was the strategy that I was focusing on. The rest of the lesson goes into reading the speeches, and there's study guides that go along with them, looking at key passages and asking the students what rhetorical devices are used, what impact does that have on the audience. And then the post-reading and assessment part of the lesson was for students to write their own speeches using rhetorical devices that they came across in the two speeches that we were looking at, the Gettysburg Address and the I Have a Dream speech. And I would be assessing those speeches. But anyways, going back to the pre-reading strategy of the personal glossary, it's a helpful strategy, and I would definitely use that in a number of lessons, but definitely for this one.